James Otis was a successful lawyer from Boston, Massachusetts, who played a key role in shaping the ideology of the American Revolution. Otis was an active member of the Boston Sons of Liberty, along with his good friends Samuel Adams and John Adams, and other prominent patriots, including John Hancock and Dr. Joseph Warren. Otis was a prolific writer and speaker, and used his skills to lead opposition to British policies, including writs of assistance, the Sugar Act, the Townshend Acts, and the Stamp Act. He is often credited for the phrase, "no taxation without representation," as well as "a man's home is his castle." His influence can be found in the Bill of Rights, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, which protects Americans against unreasonable searches and seizures. The Fourth Amendment reads, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." Otis also saw all people as equal, with the same rights, regardless of skin color. An argument can be made that he should be considered a founding father because of his early arguments for rights and liberty. Otis was an advocate for freedom for all men, regardless of the color of their skin. In Rights of the British Colonies, he wrote, "The colonists are by the law of nature free-born, as indeed all men are, white or black." On May 23, 1783, Otis was at the home of Isaac Osgood with some other people. Otis was standing in the doorway telling a story when the house was struck by lightning. Otis was killed instantly. He was 58 years old. He is buried at the Granary Burying Ground in Boston, Massachusetts. The Granary Burying Ground in Boston is one of the city's oldest and most haunted cemeteries. It is the final resting place of many notable figures from the American Revolution, including Paul Revere, Samuel Adams, and John Hancock. The Ghost of James Otis Jr. One of the most famous ghost stories from the Granary Burying Ground involves James Otis Jr., a prominent lawyer and early advocate for the American Revolution. James Otis Jr. suffered a severe head injury during a bar fight in 1769, which significantly affected his mental health. September 5th, 1769, Otis came across Robinson at the British Coffee House in Boston. The two of them started shouting at each other, and a fight broke out. The details of what was said prior to the fight and the fight itself are mostly unclear, as there are several affidavits and newspaper stories that contain different details. It seems that a crowd made up mostly of soldiers and officers from the Army, Navy, and Revenue Office surrounded Otis and Robinson as they fought. A Boston merchant, John Gridley, said he saw the crowd helping Robinson. Gridley thought that made things unfair and rushed in to help defend Otis. Otis received a serious blow to the head, and blood ran from it immediately. Gridley was struck on the head and wrist by people in the crowd. Eventually, the fight broke up. Otis and Gridley were carried out. Robinson and his friends, supposedly the other commissioners, left the coffee house. He became increasingly erratic and was eventually struck by lightning in 1783, leading to his death. Otis was buried in the Granary Burying Ground, and it is said that his spirit still lingers there. Visitors to the Granary Burying Ground have reported seeing a ghostly figure dressed in colonial attire, believed to be James Otis Jr. This apparition is often seen wandering near his grave, and some have even claimed to hear him muttering about taxation and tyranny. One particularly chilling account comes from a night watchman who reported seeing Otis's ghost standing by his tombstone, staring intently at the ground as if lost in thought. In addition to James Otis Jr., the Granary Burying Ground is said to be haunted by other spirits, shadowy figures, unexplained cold spots, and the feeling of being watched are common experiences reported by visitors. The cemetery's eerie atmosphere, combined with its rich history, makes it a fascinating place for both history enthusiasts and ghost hunters. If you're ever in Boston, a visit to the Granary Burying Ground is a must. Whether you're there for the history or the hauntings, It's sure to be an unforgettable experience.
Major John Andre was a British officer who played a significant role in the infamous plot involving Benedict Arnold. Andre was captured by American forces while carrying documents that revealed Arnold's plan to surrender West Point to the British. He was tried as a spy and hanged in 1780. For many, even on the American side, Andre left a legacy of honor. Although his request for execution by firing squad, considered a more honorable death than hanging, was rejected. According to law, he placed the noose around his own neck. Americans were taken by his charm and intellect. Washington referred to him as being more unfortunate than criminal, an accomplished man, and a gallant officer. Hamilton wrote, "Never perhaps did any man suffer death with more justice or deserve it less." Across the Atlantic, Andre's monument in Westminster Abbey bears a mourning figure of Britannia that is inscribed in part to a man universally beloved and esteemed by the army in which he served and lamented even by his foes. The site of Andre's execution in Tappan, New York, is said to be haunted by his restless spirit. The Old 76 House, a tavern where Andre was held before his execution, is a focal point for these ghostly encounters. Visitors and staff have reported seeing Andre's ghost, often described as a tall figure in a British uniform, wandering the premises. One of the most famous accounts comes from a former tavern keeper who claimed to have seen Andre's ghost on multiple occasions. The apparition was often seen near the fireplace, where Andre spent his last days. The tavern keeper described the ghost as having a sorrowful expression, as if reliving the moments leading up to his execution. Tourists visiting the Old 76 House have also reported eerie encounters. Some have felt sudden cold spots, heard unexplained footsteps, and even seen the ghostly figure of Andre standing by the window, looking out as if waiting for something. One visitor recounted feeling a tap on the shoulder, only to turn around and find no one there. The story of Major John Andre adds a poignant and eerie chapter to the history of the Revolutionary War. His tragic fate and the subsequent hauntings at Tappan serve as a reminder of the war's human cost and the lingering spirits of those who played pivotal roles.
Welcome in. Welcome in. What a day this has been. Pulling up all these words written down 250 years ago. Revisiting characters like Major Andre, who I've always had a special place in my heart for. When you read handwritten letters that they wrote, conversations they had with people they respected, people they admired, people they had aspired to be, or just like us 250 years later, trying to tell a loved one how hard it is to be in a foreign place or a rugged land or a terrible disaster such as war, and writing letters back to that loved one and struggling with words to describe. You don't want them to know how awful it is, and it's so hard to find words to express to them how much you miss them. All of these people went through that, whatever side they were on. Of course, we're talking about the American Revolution 250 years ago. Welcome in, everybody. I just, every time I do one of these shows, it just seems to amaze me how much we are alike, and how much the soldiers were alike, how much the families of the soldiers were alike, how much the grief, the angst, the fear, the honor, the duty, the savagery, the betrayal, when you talk about somebody like Benedict Arnold, we did a great big show on him when we did our Liberty series last summer. And digging into each one of these characters, I was amazed every time I read letters or read an a biography, and tried to piece together the character of the person. And I could have pulled that out of any war, any soil, at any time. And that's what I mean. I think we can. I am a big advocate for, we must learn from history or we are destined to repeat it. And I remember back when I was homeschooling my sons, and this is, there was computers, but we certainly didn't have one at the time. And they were just coming out. And we went to the library, and I was teaching them quotes, for history. And that one came up, and I went in and asked the librarian, and I remember there was a conversation between 4 librarians that were there that day. And this is in the early 90s. And I was asking them who was the person responsible for the quote, because we didn't have AI. I didn't have Grok. I couldn't Grok it. I couldn't Google it. I couldn't, at this point, I couldn't even Dewey Decimal System it, because how do you look up a quote, in a card catalog? So anyway, they were all going back and forth, and it was 3 out of 4 thought it was Churchill. And the other one said, "Yeah, I don't think so. Let's go look." And so she takes me back to the reference room where you can't take anything out, and we look through, and it's amazing how much time it took to look up something that takes seconds today. It was George Santayana. And I never forgot it, because it's such a profound statement. It's so simplistic, but it is so true, and it's so profound, and it is true in any time. So when I woke up today, wasn't sure what we were going to do tonight. I'm emailing some people back and forth, and like I said, there's been a trail for about 3 months now where people are getting hit left and right. I mean, the black magic is zippity doo dah all over the place. So please be aware. Situational awareness. Do your cleanses. Do your love bubbles. Do your golden light. Do all the things, because I'm telling you, it's out there. And it hits people, and it'll hit people that are trying to do good and going back and forth on shows and things like that. You'll notice a lot of podcasters are sick, and people are traveling. We're getting to that time. Everybody seems to be, rolling around again, getting sick, or, plans change, or jobs are shifting, or people are moving, or whatever it is. So just be aware that if you're everybody around you seems to be getting zapped, and plans are getting, shifted around, or people just seem to all of a sudden start going, batshit crazy on you. Just understand what it is. Love them right out of your area if you have to for a while, and just go be you. You got to work through this. Hey, Stockton's, how you doing, sweetie? Don't pack the baby. I miss you terrible, by the way. I'm going to miss you not being here tomorrow. You got to let me know when you can come back. I have lots of catching up to do. So, what I'm trying to get around to say is that I'm never ceases to amaze me how certain words can resonate 250 years later, or 2,000 years later, or, take your pick. It's because we stay the same, but in the core, of course we have different experiences and different things allotted to us, and our lives change, and our priorities change, and, all that. But deep down inside, it's still hard to write a letter home in a war. It's still scary to have where you live, and the country you live in, or the state, or the county, or the town, or whatever, all of a sudden start to shift in a scary way, whether it be weather. God bless everybody in North and South Carolina, in Tennessee, anybody that's affected by the weather. We still got people that haven't recovered from Helene yet, and there's more stuff. People do change. They absolutely change, but I think the core, what I mean, Renee, and hello, sweetheart. It's good to see you. What I mean is the core is the same. So it's just as difficult, I believe, for a young woman or a young man on the front of any war to write home a letter to a loved one. It's the same. When you go back to 100 years ago, 200 years ago, to the Civil War, to the Revolutionary War, wars that I know because that the ones that happened in my country. Your mileage may vary. I mean, I'm sure Russians think of Stalingrad. Whatever it is, it's the same. We all bleed. We all have loved ones. We all miss loved ones. We all get scared. We all get homesick. All of those things are similar, are the same. We might word them differently, but when I got up this morning, another show got shifted, and that's fine. It just got moved. I got some really good news on some of friends of the show that I don't want to speak out to him, but it had a really rough bout with a very severe illness, and is coming back around and doing great. And we're talking about rescheduling and getting things running back for that. So that's great news. But all of my good friends that are light workers or mediums, fill in the blank there, all going through the same thing. We're all getting hit. We all have friends that, something got to them and, they pissed a hissy or whatever and zigzagged off in that direction or that direction, family members and all that kind of stuff. Little things, flat tires, car accidents, job shifts, just weird stuff across the board, and all kinds of sickness and illness and in between, accidents, crazy accidents. Walk down 2 steps and, break your leg. It's just stuff you wouldn't think about. So put that protection out there, put that stuff out there. Okay. Because I think, again, during this whole awakening thing, we're really shifting. When consciousness shifts like that, growing pains hurt. I think this whole world is going into a little consciousness shift, the vibrational change, right? Speaking of vibrational change, I'm talking to a couple people. I hope we get on the show. We're trying to get scheduling down now. And that would be awesome because, boy, we want to talk about, you don't want me to explain, those kind of things. We need to get some people on that really understand that consciousness shift and that vibrational movement. And I think it's all connected with the, whether you're talking about CERN or you're talking about portals or all the things, and I think it's all connected with, oh gosh, the weather manipulation and, all the Mountain Dews, if you know what I mean. It's really rough, and families are really having it hard, and people just they get up and they get knocked back down. Like I said, with Helene, that's your own private war. You didn't even have to have a battle. You didn't know, you were going to have. All of a sudden, you have a storm, and you're standing in your house, and all of a sudden, your house is gone. Or your neighbor's house just floated by. Having to spend, you're in a tent, and it's winter. And you're wondering who's coming to help. It's your neighbors or it's total strangers, but it's not the people that are supposed to be helping until help arrives. And as soon as help arrives, you start getting back on your feet. Bam, you get hit with a wildfire or another tornado or another storm. And it just, it's like you can't get your breath. But we keep going. And I don't think that's any different than some of these young men. Really, that's what they were. Fighting in the Revolutionary War. There's a lot of old men too, but when you think about it, like these drummer boys and these young people, it always seems to be the very young. What was it in Vietnam? 19? That was the average age? Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Bernice. I saw a gentleman who went and got a quick meal at one of the Applebee's or something. And across from me is this gentleman sitting, having a meal with his family. He's a Vietnam vet. He's got, the colors and everything. And I waited. When he walked by, I stood up and I told him, thank you for your service. Because they didn't get it when they came back. And it really stinks, really stinks. And it stinks just as much for the the Civil War guys, or like I said, the guys in Stalingrad, or name your battle, name your war, name your, you know, French and Indian War. It doesn't matter. War's war, and it's terrible. But there comes a time where people just feel that shift. They feel that awakening. They feel that need to defend their square foot of real estate. You know what I mean? Like, I think we all feel that when we get in our cars. I think that's the quickest way to get an idea about it. You're in your car. That's your familiar space. That's your property. You own that. You pay its insurance. You put gas in it. It's like a pet, you know. But when you're in that box, however it may be, or however it may look, that's like your space, and you're moving that property around in and amongst other people's property, and it can get a little hairy sometimes. You know, I think that's why road rage gets so quick. It's like, how dare you come over into my space, or you're obstructing my movement, or you didn't follow the rules, and that's making me mad because I'm over here following the rules. You see where I'm getting? Because if you've been defending your property, your square foot of real estate, your homestead, your apartment, your car, whatever, and people come over and infringe on that, that's where you start. You didn't have a problem when they were over there doing that in their yard, or doing it down the block, or whatever it was, their house, whatever they were doing. As long as they weren't hurting anybody, you just kind of go by and shake your head. But when they come over and do it in your yard, or do it in your car, or do it to you, that's when you get offended. That's when you push back. You go, whoa, wait a minute. And there comes a time, I think, in so many of these wars, it probably didn't need to be wars. They probably could be talked through. You know, peace is always the answer. It's like, look, that's yours. This is mine. You stay over there. I'll stay over here. And as long as, you know, chill. Doesn't have to happen. But there are times, I believe, we can make a good case for it to have had to have shown a show of force. And I think that's where the people were in the Revolutionary War. At least you can read that on paper. You can hear it in their words, in their cadence, in the way they spoke, in their angst that they wrote in their letters. And that's what I mean, that whether they were letters then or letters written today, they were so similar in the feeling. The presentation might be different. It might be in text now. It might be on an X post, or it may be in a conversation, you know, you're having over your cell phone or your sat phone, you know. Of course, that's different. But the sentiment, the feeling, the fear, the inherent, well, actually, I think it's primal, of survival. Don't take mine. I worked for this. I love this. This is mine. It belongs to me. This is my house. This is my car. This is my body. This is my square foot of real estate. This is my country. This is my state. This is my town. You know, and I think when a people get pushed to a certain point, especially if they're the ones that feel like they, you know, everybody's working, everybody's paying taxes, you know, even then, that was a big part of it, even though they were so much more minuscule compared to some of the burdens we're under today, no matter where you are. And they got pushed, and pushers get pushed, right? When that taxation without representation, when the government that is ruling over you is doing things secretly behind your back, and then on top of that, they treat you like you're a petulant child and have no rights. Just keep working, keep giving us the money. You follow the rules. We don't have to follow the rules. You have to follow the rules. If we break the rules, we're going to break the rules right in front of you, and then we're going to flaunt it, because we're in charge, and we're you know, that's just the way it's going to be, you know. And those people had been governing themselves, handling their colonies, and they just kept getting pushed, you know. And when the king, you know, they were broke, They said, look, those pesky colonists, they need to pay us back for that war we helped them out with. We went over there and stood with them and, helped them sort their issues. And now, they can give us a little back. And, they want to send their goods over here and back and forth. And, they have to have us because we have everything that they need. They can't do it without us. We have lots of supplies they're very used to. So if they're going to listen. And they took that for a while and they tried to make it work. And some people in Boston started to create a little bit of a fuzz down there at the Green Dragon. And you started hearing people like John Adams and Sam was getting pretty loud back then. And John Hancock, he was just a smuggler and a businessman. And very rich and doing okay. He didn't have any real qualms about it. He was doing okay, but he fell in line. And you started hearing from other people, and they were starting to get heralded on the Herald Squares in all of the other major cities in these colonies. And word started to spread, and names started to get recognized, and things started to get read in pubs and saloons and, to the farmers that gathered for supplies and things like this. And people started to get rustled up and they started to say, yeah, it stinks being told what we have to do. And it stinks having to work all the time. And all this money is going to other people who didn't work for it. And who's that person that's telling us that we've got to do over here, and we owe them money, and they're way across the ocean, and he doesn't know what's going on over here. And we can send letters and we can try to talk to them and be ignored and treated like petulant children and that need to just get in line and obey. And they had enough. And I can understand somewhat, we don't know exactly how they felt. We have an idea somewhat if you're following the rules and, everybody's following the rules on the highway. Here comes this one jerk off, zigzagging in and out and taking off and speeding. And right away you get this inside of you where you're going like, how come I want to see him get a ticket? Gosh, I hope there's a cop just pulls him over. Because we all like, yep. But you'd feel good for a moment that person got pulled over and got a ticket because you're following the rules. And if you break the rules, they're for everybody. The person breaking the rules should get punished, right? That whole thing in the beginning, Major Andre was a spy. He knew he was a spy. Other spies knew he was spies. But he had honor. He had a love. He had a way about him, and he had people that he cared about. And when he got caught, he went up to that rope with honor. It's still spoken of today of how he, died like an officer should have for treason. There was a definite one thing. One punishment for treason. Same now as it was then. And a lot of people died that did minuscule things. But they got caught on the wrong side, wearing the wrong uniform, with the wrong clothes. That's what the whole thing turn is all about, the Culper ring, right? And what dangerous that was. So my whole point in all this is, although it was 250 years ago, I think a lot of us can look and see parallels of today. What it would feel like to be a soldier, what it would feel like to be a civilian in a town that had been overtaken by someone you would consider to be an enemy, somebody that all of a sudden showed up and was disrupting your life and your neighbors and your safety and your well-being. I think a lot of us has gone through that over the past couple of years. A lot of people were in small towns where a lot of people showed up all at once, and they're just like, I don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, because there's a lot more car accidents now, you're barely making it, and your car insurance like almost triples without warning. Just so many crazy things. And then you get to the point where it's like, how much is enough is too much? And that's where they were in these colonies in America 250 years ago. 250 years ago, 1775. It was really heated by then. Really heated. And it was at the breaking point of multiple celebrity from each, delegates from each colony were meeting at the First Continental Congress and Second Continental Congress, and they're meeting these great names like John Hancock and Ben Franklin, and George Washington was going to these meetings in uniform, by the way. We did a great episode on George Washington, how he would show up in his uniform and he was looking the part before anybody got picked to lead the new militia, the new army. Very first, really, because up till then it had been militia, but you know the story. So what were they feeling back then? Well, I said all that to get to this. One, I'm really glad you're here. Two, I had no idea I was going to do this show tonight because, like I said, when I got up this morning, I was doing something else with that person. Had some family issues. God bless them. And I was looking through, the media and reading the headlines, and all of a sudden I found out that today is the 250th anniversary, March 23rd, of the Patrick Henry speech, "Give me liberty or give me death." Probably a pinpoint, if you could. This is after the Boston Massacre. This is after everybody tried to pin John Adams into a corner, the wonderful lawyer who stood up for the British soldiers who were getting pretty much railroaded in that whole Boston Massacre thing. Who yelled fire? Were they pelted with rocks? Were these young kids really scared? Were they in danger? Did they feel like their life was in danger? Were they just following the order to fire? Well, when they asked John, who went through an awful lot because he was going to do the right thing, and just like a doctor, I don't think they take the oath anymore. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but first do no harm. He was a man who believed that they deserved counsel. Who else was going to counsel for them? Who else was going to be an advocate in this atmosphere? And he took a lot of death threats and everything else for doing it. But he stood his ground. He was an honorable man, as well as being extremely intelligent. Great orator. A little bit of a hothead. But I can absolutely sympathize with that. But honorable for that, for sure. Wound up becoming president. His son became president, John Quincy Adams. But going back to where all those seeds were planted, if the seeds of this disdain and this anger and this billowing of feeling started to come together in the 13 colonies, and it wasn't just in the pubs, and it wasn't just at the Green Dragon or where the lawyers gathered to speak intelligent ideas and thoughts. It was being spoken over fences and farms and everywhere because everybody was feeling the pressure. Everybody was feeling the pressure. And people were reading about things like the Boston Massacre and Paul Revere's etching of, although exaggerated, really spread around so quickly. And people started to really fear that if we don't do something, we will be overrun. The British are going to come and take over, and every one of our houses is going to have a British soldier in it, and it's just going to be awful. And we're buckling under the taxes and the weight of the taxes, and they're holding back supplies, and we really need things that we can't do for ourselves here. And I think that is the number one thing. And Thomas Jefferson was very big on this. Be self-sustaining. Don't need things you can't provide for yourself, or someone else, another group that's right there can do. When you start outsourcing all of your products and you start depending on all outsourced products to come in, well, if they get wild hair or something happens, you can't get that in, then what are you going to do? And that's what they were facing here with the Revolutionary War. But 250 years ago, in a little place called St. John's Church, there was a man that was sitting in the pews listening to all the other speakers. And it was said by some of the people that were sitting there, and some of the people in the room are names you would know. George Washington, so many others. But you'll hear that. They said they kept looking at one, and he was just really agitated, and he had a stoic look on his face and a fire in his eye. And at one point, he had had enough. He had listened to everything he was going to hear. He knew that his surroundings, his people, everything he knew was coming to a crescendo. And he was at a point where he was of no return. And he got up and he spoke without note in hand, off the top of his head and from the very center of his heart. And he spoke a speech that still resonates today. And like I said, I woke up and I thought we were doing another show, and I started getting ready for it, and I started checking on things and with a couple other people, future guests. And I said, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was going to do something else. I started researching a little bit, picking up another story where I'd left off last week. And I came across something, and I saw that this was the anniversary of the Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death speech. And I said, well, I have to do it. And I know there's ghost stories wrapped around it. So that's how we got here tonight. How did you get here tonight? I love you all. I see you, Kat. Good to see you, baby. How you doing? Good to see you. How else we got? Henry? Man, Henry, it's good to see you. I hope you got, is it chilly out there? You got both fireplaces going tonight, hun? Or are you having nice weather? Hey, Chris, how you doing? It's good to see everybody in here tonight. Lisa Ray, good to see you. Vixen Doe, I saw you in here earlier, and I think Midwest Gerald was the first one in. Hey, Woo. Good to see you, Derek. Derek's got good stuff over there. I keep trying to talk Derek into coming on here and talking about some wonderful conspiracy stuff and UFOs. And what do you think of that new F-47, Woo? Told you. Woo and I were going back and forth a little bit. Derek and I were going back and forth his channel. I was commenting under there when all the drones and everything was going. And remember, I did a couple shows with different people on that. And I said, it's more than one thing. It's us. It's new stuff. It's stuff they're testing. They're using it. And they're looking for stuff. And we all talked all about that, what they might be looking for. Now, the plasma orbs, that was something totally different. I'm like, I don't know. That one's kind of got me. But here's some ideas. But as far as the other stuff, I knew that in so many other countries, I mean, drones have been being used for a very long time. And I would be upset if we didn't have them. Trust me. Everybody, we've always got to keep up with the Joneses, But some of the stuff that's coming out now, you tell me that's not reverse engineered. It's incredible. If you haven't seen the F-47, and I don't know if they're using that as the working title, but just to shut up anybody that wants to know, no, he didn't name it after himself. The generals did that in honor of him. So it's pretty cool. And it's pretty badass if you hadn't seen it. I'll see if I can pull up a little piece of it if you haven't seen it. But what do you think of it, Derek? Have you seen it? It's a trip, right? Chilly rain tonight, Henry? Yeah. You got the fireplace going or no? Is it warm where you are? 72? It's cold today, 40, I think, here in Jersey. Yep. I hope Froze is doing good. I heard they were having problems out there in East Tennessee and Western North Carolina. I hope everybody's okay. Are the fires down or is that South Carolina? I can't keep up anymore. I just send love and I hope everybody's doing okay. Yep. You can't type tonight. It's okay. So that's how we wound up doing this story because I came across that said, and I thought, how incredible is that? I absolutely love Patrick Henry. There is a wonderful writer, a great history buff, very smart young man. And he's on Substack and he calls himself the Ghost of Patrick Henry is his, what do you call it? Pseudonym. And he would get this tonight. He really would. A lot of people are talking about it. I'm really glad to see it out on X and a lot of the different social media because, damn it should be remembered. There's been many unsung heroes in our history. And right now I'm talking about American history, but really in anybody's history. I mean, there's always going to be that guy that does the amazing thing, or the woman, or the Molly pitcher, or heroes are. There's everyday heroes too that are just as important. That mom that takes care of those kids and goes without to make sure her kids can go to that special dance or get that pair of shoes, or go on a class trip or whatever it may be. That game they really want. The dad that goes to work all the time, the grandparents that take care of kids that they never thought that they'd be taken care of at this age. All the heroes, all the unsung heroes. But the ones that go down in history, and if we try to get it right, if the history isn't messed with and lied about and twisted, you can really become so inspired. And I think the reason we can become so inspired is because of what I said in the beginning of this word salad of mine. It's because we are the same. Human instinct. Do you see what I mean? Is we're just the same. I can go back and listen to Bible stories and the angst that the people had, and the worry and the fear and the loneliness and the missing loved ones and all of that, the letters and the things that they would say if they could. It's just the same as Andre's letters to his lost loves. One of them very well may have been Benedict Arnold's wife, but I'm sure he had a girl in every port. He was a good looking dude. Even his illustrations were pretty good looking. But he was slick, and he was sure of himself, but he wasn't arrogant. He had that quality about him. But it's the honor, I think, that was so attractive. The honor and the duty on both sides that gets me all the time, So when I saw this, I knew we had to do it, and I started digging, and I was like, man, I hope there's a ghost story in here somewhere. So we got a couple of those. But I think the most important thing is, I don't know how much you guys know about Patrick Henry. I certainly was no expert on him. I could tell you a whole bunch about Ben Franklin. I could tell you a whole bunch about, Samuel Adams and, several characters, even Paul Revere. But Patrick Henry wasn't one I had dug deep into. I loved his words. I loved the way he spoke. I loved his passion. Wonderful orator. Fantastic lawyer. But it turns out, after all of the digging I did today, and this was just a day of digging in, I think he got a bad rap on being a husband too. But not in the way you'd think. So there's a story in here, I think, that's going to come up and give you a little bit of an idea of how also just listening to the few facts on the story, you can really get it wrong. When you dig a little bit deeper, you go, oh, that's a totally different, that's a horse of a different color, you know? So I think there's a lot of lessons in that too. We need to do that now and today in our lives, of not jumping to conclusions, or like, is that the facts? Do we have all the facts? Because I think tempers are high, and a lot of people that have been struggling for a couple of years, maybe many years, just had enough of the BS. So we've kind of gotten just to that point of, just, I'm not dealing with it, just keep your crazy. I'm all full up. Go put it somewhere else. But I think we can be very quick to misunderstand something and misjudge something, especially in people, because I think they're reacting a little, who knows what they've been through. And I think that goes into our episode a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about, be careful who you're talking to on, the keyboard. You don't know what they're going through on the other side. You don't even really know who you're talking to. You don't, my thing I like to say is, I don't know if you've been in, you're up to 8 years in a 12-year-old bottle of scotch. I don't know what you're on. I don't know what you're smoking. I don't know what you've been doing all day. I don't know your frame of mind. You see what I mean? So be careful. Maybe don't engage with negative energy, and maybe think before you type, because, let's just give people some space right now. Just like, let them chill, let them ferment a little bit, let them season, if they come back around, okay. If not, that's their journey. You're responsible for your journey. And I think Patrick Henry's journey was absolutely a worthy one, to say the least. And I'm really glad I saw that this morning, and I got to spend the day looking into him. If anybody here knows little facts about him or things around that happened with him, please put it here in the chat. I'll be happy to put it up. I went through and I grabbed some things. So we're going to give a couple of channels on YouTube, and I think it was Daily Motion as well. Credit here. But I found some fantastic channels that you should be aware of. If you're interested in Virginia history, which rich history. If you're interested in haunted Virginia and tours and things that they have there, it's plenty. I don't know, sweetie. Henry, you okay? Oh. Hang on one second. I have all his books. He went a bit off the deep end in France. Are you talking about our guest tonight? Are you talking about Patrick Henry? I didn't study him. Like I said, didn't have a lot of time. I pretty much studied in between and all around this speech, and then went for see if there's ghost stories and hauntings where he had been and things like that to put together this. But yeah, please pop it in there. Did he go off? Did he go off the deep end? So let's do this to get a little bit of an idea of who Patrick Henry was. Let's do this one, because he was in and about Virginia. So a lot of his homes, I think I have 3 of them that he was at, and that's of course where the St. John's Church was. Let's do a little bit of this one. Oh, this was fantastic. This is Kentucky History Channel. And it's just simply put a history of Patrick Henry. It's 4 minutes, but I wanted to give this channel a heads up. So let's subscribe with them. I already gave them a thumbs up here, but it was so well done that I just wanted to give them a shout out. So we'll watch a few minutes of this one.
Patrick Henry was born May 29, 1736, in Hanover County, Virginia, to John and Sarah Henry. His father was an immigrant from Scotland, and his mother was a wealthy widow. Henry received most of his education from his father and uncle. He played the fiddle and flute. He attended church with his mother from an early age and heard many sermons. When Henry was 15, he helped his father with the family store. This was Henry's first of many jobs he would have over the years. He married Sarah Shelton, and they had 6 children. With his marriage, he received some farmland and grew tobacco for a few years until their farmhouse burned down. He then worked with his father-in-law, running a tavern, and started studying law. He became a lawyer in 1760. Henry was a really good lawyer. His reputation grew with the Parsons Cause case in 1763. He entered politics in 1765 when he was elected to the House of Burgesses. Henry spoke out against the Stamp Act of 1765. Many said his comments were treason. His speaking ability and stance against Britain helped fuel other colonists to protest and take up arms. In 1774, he was a delegate to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia. During the convention, he met Samuel Adams, and they both became vocal about revolution. One of Henry's famous quotes is as follows: "The distinctions between Virginians, Pennsylvanians, New Yorkers, and New Englanders are no more. I am not a Virginian, but an American." The following year, at the Virginia Convention, during a speech, Henry gave his most famous quote, "Give me liberty or give me death." The Revolutionary War started a few months later. Henry became the first commander-in-chief of the Virginia militia, but resigned after 6 months. He became the first governor of Virginia. As governor, he supported the war efforts by sending supplies and equipment to George Washington. He also sent George Rogers Clark to fight against the British in Ohio and Kentucky. He served a total of 5 terms as Virginia's governor. Henry was an anti-federalist and feared that the federal government could turn out to be similar to the British monarchy. He did not attend the Constitutional Convention in 1878 because he did not feel the document upheld states' rights. In 1790, Henry retired from politics and focused on his law practice. He was approached to hold many offices, Supreme Court Justice, Secretary of State, and Attorney General, but turned them all down. His first wife had died in 1775. He remarried Dorothea. Henry had a total of 17 children. In his final days, Henry was convinced to run for office in the Virginia legislature by George Washington. He won, but died on June 6, 1799, at his home at Red Hill, Charlotte County, Virginia. Hope you've enjoyed learning about Patrick Henry. He was one of America's founding fathers. If not for his writings, speeches, and protests, colonists may not have rebelled against Britain. There is no record of Patrick Henry ever stepping foot in Kentucky, but he did make some important decisions for the state. His biggest connection to Kentucky today is Henry County. The 31st county of Kentucky is named after Patrick Henry.
See, wasn't that just fabulous? I just love that. He did such a great job. I just had to give him a shout out, and I couldn't have done better in that short amount of time. So, and I'm sure it was a lot of hard work put into that. So go and subscribe to that channel if you like, Kentucky history, short and to the point. He did a great job. And thank you for that, Lisa. Please hit that, share, and subscribe. And also go over there and give that young man a thumbs up. That would be nice for him. Wasn't it fabulous? Just, right to the point. Yep, I love history so much. So there it is. And I had no idea he was busy. I had no idea. So here's the thing. I think one thing that for sure is we've gotten things have obviously changed for us. I mean, these people had to go through so much just to, get outside the outhouse in a storm, or, dumping chamber pots, or getting breakfast together, or going to get a meal and going out and hunting for turkey and venison and all that, their days seem to be so full. And if you were an intellectual, if you were a lawyer, if you were studying, multiple books, if you were lucky enough to get the books, it's just so much in a day. And I think that we spend so much time doing the things that we do. We have our jobs, we have our social media, we have our shows that we watch on TV, our games that we watch on TV, our kids, all the things. And you'd think that we'd get more done. But I think that in some cases we're almost like on a treadmill, that never ends. And I don't know, when you look back at their days and how much they got done and how much they accomplished, it's, of course, out of necessity in so many cases, but it just seemed like so much, So when you hear something like that, yeah, he was busy, he was getting it done. And the thing that got me was he turned down so much. And I'd love to really have the time to dig the letters and responses and, what was he doing instead? Did he want to go fishing? Was he wanted to spend time with all those kids? To my knowledge, he was married twice, I think, maybe 3 times. I know at least twice. So it's 4 women, right? One of them didn't have it too good, and I'm going to get a little bit into her story too, but I think it's just right to tell his story first, and then everything just kind of fold in. So the next thing, let's see, it's a little bit of what I have for you next. Oh, here we go. We'll just go ahead and dig right into, is that it? Oh, but that's it. That's it. Made your little tape, made your little video. Now, I could have filled this thing up with so many quotes, so many letters, so many things. But I grabbed a couple off the top that I thought, if it was said today, would it resonate with things that are going on around us? And if it did resonate with somebody today, in which way would it go? Because it seems today that people of 2 different minds can look at the same thing and see 2 totally different things. It boggles my mind. But this started happening about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I saw it on Facebook. I'm looking at a picture. And I remember talking about this at a couple of dinner engagements that I had. And I said, look at this picture. And I don't want to tell you what it is because that'll change your whole perspective on things. I want you to see it basic. I'm looking at it and I see this. And I've listened to people all day that have completely opposite 180 from each other reaction to looking at the same thing. And I think that has a lot to do with neurolinguistic programming and people that just get, I hate to say brainwashed, but in a lot of ways it is, because it's the same type of reaction when people are brainwashed. It's here's the test. Ask them a question. Can they answer it? Can they give you a fact? And if they answer it and you ask them another question, do they just start yelling? Well, yelling and screaming is a sign of lower intelligence. And it's also a sign of anxiety and panic. But it's also a sign of brainwashing. It's a side effect, because everything is coming out of a different spot in your brain, and you can almost see them when they see certain facts, and it takes a little bit to crack through. But once they do, it's just like, what? And you can almost see it happen. But when I was pulling up his quotes, I was reading them and I was trying to look at it. Could other people see it this way? Not if they have the facts. So the people that really know what's going on, and the people that have been the cars on the side of the road that watch that one car driving crazy and getting away with a bunch of stuff and speeding and zigzagging out and getting pulled over by a cop as you go around the bend in the road. Those people that go, okay. And they go to work with a little bit of a smile on their face, like, okay, we're all following the rules. That one didn't, and they got caught. That's how it's supposed to be. right? So some of these quotes I pulled up here, think about it like that. And do they resonate today? 250 years ago. Patrick Henry. Here we go. Blows my mind.
Imagine this. The air is filled with electric tension, a room full of eager faces, and one man stands, ready to ignite a revolution with his words. Welcome to the 250th anniversary of the Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death speech. Let's journey back to that pivotal moment that changed the course of history.
The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government. Power is the great evil with which we are contending. We have divided power between three branches of government and erected checks and balances to prevent abuse of power. However, where is the check on the power of the judiciary? If we fail to check the power of the judiciary, I predict that we will eventually live under judicial tyranny. I know of no way of judging the future but by the past. Patrick Henry.
Gentlemen, there is no longer any ground for hope. If we wish to be free, if we wish to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges which belong to us as free men, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, in which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our struggle be obtained, then we must fight. I repeat it, sir. We must fight! And appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all we have left us.
Arms, Mr. Henry! What arms? We're weak, sir!
They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so powerful an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week? Or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and a British Guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs, hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemy hath bound us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means the God of nature hath placed in our power. 3 millions of people, armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country that which we possess, are invincible by any force our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we should not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sirs, we have no election. Should we be base enough to desire it, it is now already too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat, but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged, their clanking may be heard upon the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come!
Mr. Henry, we speak for peace, sir!
It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that blows from the north shall bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that they wish? What would they have? Is life so dear? Or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death!
To arms, Mr. Henry!
St. John's Church Foundation, done in St. John's Church, Virginia. He did have quite a lot to say. A lot. Thanks, Patrick. Wow. Crispy says, heck yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. So there you go. I couldn't find a better way of letting you hear that speech. And I mean, to be done right there in St. John's, which still stands today. Powerful, powerful to get up there with no notes, just from the heart. Absolutely resonates 250 years later today. We thank you, Patrick Henry. I think a lot of those quotes resonate today. You cannot have a judicial, that was one of the, a coup. You cannot have the unelected speak for the people. The law stands, the Constitution stands, Bill of Rights stand. And we're all driving our cars, following the rules, paying the taxes, even though we didn't want to this year after seeing what they were doing with it. I'll tell you what, I looked at mine and I'm like, you know, I think I could go down to Home Depot and get the stuff to fill these potholes and use my money just to fill the potholes a lot better than, you know, after we've heard what they've done with it. And that's something that we've known all along. And there's a lot of stuff that's coming to the surface now. But a lot of things that are coming to the surface now is our history. And, you know, I'm reading the chat and I'm agreeing with you and homeschooling and digging into things that I know for a fact, I learned in school and thought I can remember sitting in fourth, fifth grade going, this isn't right. Reading about Native Americans and things that happened then and hearing stories from my own side on that, going, something's wrong here. They're not putting the truth in, So that by the time my kids got to school and they were coming home and telling me that some of the things they were learning, and again, this was back, early 90s. I went, you're going to be homeschooled. And one of the things we spent a lot of time on was history. So I know, history is told by the victors, and sometimes it's made up right out of whole cloth. But I love going back and looking at the journals and reading the letters and the handwritten, just the handwriting fascinates me. And the pride taken in the expression of the words. I love that. So I go to those as much as possible. And some of these people, so profound, but I will never get over the fact that it sounds like so much of the things we're going through and feeling today. But the one thing that they were doing is they were creating the words that we're following today, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, that our laws are based on. And what I really like seeing now, today, as much as I love history, I would have never remembered that today was the 250th anniversary of this speech. If it hadn't been for the people that are in charge now, put it forth and reminded me. And they've been doing that for a while and reminded me of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and bringing up the pride in that history of it's not without its faults, but we can all put it right up on the front porch and keep an eye on it because we're learning from history. And I think we're trying to get back a stable footing based on that. That's my opinion. But I'll tell you, today in this very show is a product of that, of bringing that forth and being proud of all of it and saying, hey, we're flawed, and we definitely have some garbage to clean up. And we definitely have to stop doing some very bad things we've been doing. But we're looking at it and we're working on it. And I've always really been proud of a person who recognizes their mistakes and instead of balling up and giving up and being wrapped in that failure, stood up and had the attitude of, all right, well, now I'm going to get up and I know how not to do it. Now we're going to try this way. And maybe I went at it wrong. And I think we're all like that. And I think that's how we got to be light workers and warriors in our own right out there fighting the good fight, because you can see the mistakes. You can see loved ones falling into, oh, this is going to be a battle. Okay, go ahead. I've had to do it. I know it's not easy. You see friends do it. You see people that are supposed to be smart falling for the dumbest tricks. But it's okay. We all do. And I can't imagine what these people went through in their time, but I can read what they felt. And this was amazing today to look into this man and to remember these words, because I feel the same way. Give me liberty. Too many people spilled that blood, and I don't care what country you're in right now or what soil you're standing on, but everybody feels that this is mine. This is my square foot of real estate. This is my country, and I'm going to be proud of it, warts and all. But we can do better. We see the mistakes. We're trying to right them. We're not pushing them under the rug so we can trip on them later, putting it right out front. And I love that. And these guys were just the beginning. These men, these women, and put together the words that we're still fighting over today. It's amazing. It's amazing. So in all that strife, you're going to have little energy left over, I believe. And there's our Crispy. And celebrating Patrick Henry and all the different places he lived. And is there anything resonating and left behind? Well, in one place called Scotchtown Plantation, this was a house that Patrick Henry had with his first wife. And I'll tell you a little bit about it. This is the home of the founding father, Patrick Henry, from 1771 to 1778. From here, he rode to St. John's Church in Richmond to attend the Second Virginia Convention, where he gave his famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech. There it is. So Scotchtown Plantation, where Patrick Henry lived with his first wife, Sarah Shelton Henry, from 1771 to 1777. Now, this is probably one of the most controversial things I found today, but hear me out. The most prominent tale revolves around Sarah, whose tragic life and death had fueled haunting legends. Sarah and Patrick were childhood sweethearts who married young, he at 18, she at 16, in 1754. After moving to Scotchtown in 1771, Sarah gave birth to their sixth child, the poor woman. But soon after, she began showing signs of mental illness. Now, I would guess here that this is, the baby blues or melancholia, they would have called it back then. In a lot of cases, this could really, they also say that this was a large part of Mary Lincoln's issue, and of course, all the deaths of her children and the war and everything else just pushed her right over the edge. I mean, she was certifiable batshit crazy, bless her heart. But a lot of this times, this got misdiagnosed, and you're almost in this. Just people just didn't know how to deal with it back then. So now they're also saying it could be a psychosis, a severe condition linked to childbirth. Her condition deteriorated over the next 4 years, and by her final year, she was confined to 2 basement rooms in Scotchtown. Patrick, horrified by the brutal treatments at a public hospital in Williamsburg, chose to care for her at home despite societal norms that often dismissed or institutionalized the mentally ill. Now, I did dig into this a little bit because this is going to unveil a ghost story. And in a lot of these ghost stories, they took the short version, as we often do, and we often find when we're researching these things. They took the short end and they kind of made Patrick look a little mean, unfeeling, ashamed of her, all the bad things you can think of. It's like, why would anybody ever confine somebody to a basement? Well, it's not really how it sounds. And it's not really like you hear in the olden days where they had the crazy cousin they kept in the attic kind of thing. This was for her protection. She had round-the-clock care. He didn't want her out of his sight, and he was scared to death. If anything that you can read where he was talking to friends about this or anything else, this was something he tried to keep close to his vest, but he was very concerned about it because the only place he could send her, Williamsburg and several other places he looked into, were absolutely horrific conditions, and he would not put her through that. So I believe that during this time is when this is 1771. Okay, this is right before he's already moving in through working as a founding father, and he still kept very close tabs on her for her care. I believe he really did care about her, and I believe what he did was out of love, but this is just my opinion. So I ask you to take that in consideration if you read about some of the ghost stories and some of the things that go around Scotchtown. I have no idea what they tell you there about this, but that's just my take on a short research in a day. I'm no expert on Patrick Henry. That's just what I picked up from it as a light worker looking into it. So again, he was horrified and he kept her there. Now, okay, so he chose to care for her at home despite the social norms. Sarah died in 1775. Okay, so the same year he's doing the speech. Possibly by suicide, though the exact cause remains unclear due to scant records. Since her death, Scotchtown has been the site of numerous paranormal reports. Neighbors and visitors have claimed to see candlelight flickering in the windows when the house was abandoned, moving from room to room as if carried by unseen figure. A female apparition in long flowing white dress has been spotted drifting from the basement to the outbuilding once used for servants, observed by both children and adults. Items within the house like a tea caddy, a teapot, and a period candle have reportedly moved on their own when the property was locked and empty. During tours, guests have heard a piercing scream from the basement. When Sarah spent her final days causing some to flee in terror. Staff have also struggled to open the basement door, feeling resistance as if someone were holding it shut from the other side. Patrick's great-great-great-granddaughter reportedly sensed the haunting and refused to stay overnight. The lingering presence is often attributed to Sarah's tragic end and her confinement, suggesting her spirit remains tied to Scotchtown in a place of both love and suffering. Patrick sold the plantation in 1777, perhaps unable to bear the memories, but the stories persisted, and it's one of Virginia's most noted haunted sites. Now, I don't know if you guys had ever heard that one. In all my 50 years ago story, I had never heard about this one. So that blows my mind. It's very sad. And also to think of the timing. She died the same year he gave this speech, 1775. Did you? I remember hearing about this. I agree with you, Cisco. 100% better to be home than an institution. That's what I was thinking. And when I was picking up the stuff that he was, saying to the few people he confided in, that was just what I was picking up. That he loved her so much, that kind of like Lincoln. Lincoln was forced there to the end to put, her Mary in it was like a little house, like a little boarding house kind of thing. It wasn't an institution, even though it was called that. We talked about it in the episode, but it just gets so much that you don't know what to do, and when you have all the doctors and everybody telling you, look, you're going to have to do it for her own good kind of thing. And everything else that's going on. I can't imagine the man, let me tell you this. There was a lot more in the continent of the founding fathers and the people that hung with them and the attorneys and the the rich and the wealthy that were amongst them that would have never done this. They would have taken the easy route out just because the doctor said so. And I thought that this showed a lot of strength and will, for them both. So I think that's kind of cool. All right, so this is a couple of pictures of the inside of this house. There's the old spinning wheel. Look at that. Look at the brick floor. Look at this. And she's down there in the basement in this place. Look at this fireplace. I wish Henry could see this. Maybe he'll see it tomorrow when he watches it. But something else, huh? Bet you that put off some good heat. Right. All right, so this is some other takes from people around this place. Neighbors and visitors have reported paranormal activity, including the candlelight flickering in the windows when the house is empty, the female apparition in the white dress drifting from the basement, not just to the outbuildings. To the outbuildings observed by both children and adults. This tea caddy is more like a tea set. It was almost had a Japanese print. I think I have a picture of it, but I'm not sure. That keeps moving. Even to this day, it's crazy. Like, she's taking it from room to room or whoever it is. It could be a servant. It doesn't have to be her. I think the screams in the basement could be her or residual. But, I hear this and it breaks my heart because this is why I say, investigating asylums. I mean, what frame of mind were they in when they passed? And now you're talking to them and they don't even realize they're dead. And there's so much to get through. It's hard, but it's heartbreaking, really. These stories suggest that Sarah's spirit lingers, tied to her tragic confinement and death, making Scotchtown one of Virginia's most known haunted sites. So here's another property linked to Patrick Henry. Now, this one, of course, built in 1925. Patrick was not there. However, it is named after him, and it is in Roanoke, Virginia. Um, when I first saw a few pictures of it, I'm looking at it, I'm going, gosh, this is kind of a morose building, but the next picture gives it a little bit more justice. So here is the Patrick Henry Hotel. During its days as a hotel, the Patrick Henry catered to traveling salesmen. It had an ornate lobby and a spacious ballroom and 300 guest rooms. It's quite large. It was chartered by William Wise Boxley and designed by William Lee Stoddart. Boxley was a local business leader and Stoddart an acclaimed architect from Tenafly, New Jersey. Besides the Patrick Henry Hotel, Stoddart was the mastermind behind hospitality structures, including the Wyckoff Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Genetti Hotel in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It's a little bit on that. Here's another shot of the hotel. Now you can kind of see its grandeur. The architecture around the windows, all the, it's just such an odd shaped building. It almost looked more like a theater to me than a hotel. I don't know what you guys are getting from it, but that's how it felt to me. But grand nonetheless. The Patrick Henry Hotel in Roanoke, built in 1925 and named in his honor, also has ghost stories, though not directly tied to Henry's life. Reports include 3 spectral men watching over the ballroom, a pipe-smoking ghost kicking tablecloths on the second floor, and an elderly woman's presence felt near a room where she supposedly died. While Henry never lived there, the hotel's name connects it to his legacy, adding to the lore surrounding his name. These tales blend history with the supernatural, reflecting how Patrick Henry's personal tragedies and the places associated with him have left an eerie imprint. For sure. Now, I thought this was cool. This was one of the people who stayed there, and it was one of their reviews, and I wanted to share it with you. This is from Brian, all the way from 2017, and apparently at 4:37 a.m. he felt like writing about this. We stayed here many years ago for a wedding in the dead of winter. Cute there. February. Snow had blanketed the area, causing all of the businesses to close. The hotel put up the staff that were already there, allowing them to continue to operate. The hotel was not brightly lit, so it bolstered the imagination. The lobby had a mezzanine wrapping all the way around. Nobody mentioned anything they saw until the next morning at breakfast. The first thing that happened was the impromptu rehearsal dinner set up at the last minute on the mezzanine. The walls were decorated with old pictures of the hotel. My wife was looking at a picture of a banquet hall with rows of chairs and a single man sitting in a chair at the front of the photo. She turned her head to talk to someone. Then when she looked at the photo again, it had changed. All of the chairs were empty. Now, how many times Steve and I gotten on this show and told you about the photographs that change? Sometimes you show a photograph to somebody and you're still looking at the ghost in the picture and they can't see it. Even if you point, draw a circle around it, they can't see it. And pictures that change at will. Here's another one. And I thought that was so interesting. And it is a Patrick Henry Hotel. It's wonderful. Next, the man that married our niece reported that when he looked down at the lobby, he saw ghostly yellow figures moving around. But the worst was after the wedding. They had rented a banquet hall so we could have the reception. After everyone went to bed, the newlyweds retired to their hotel room. At midnight, it got deathly cold in the room. Shadows were moving on the walls. Suddenly, they saw a transparent man sitting in a large overstuffed chair. Panicked, she called her dad, who demanded that the front desk move them to a room without hot and cold running spirits. That's such a name. That's a name of a future episode, I promise you. When he initially called to complain, they told him that they had a whole folder full of incidents that were reported in that room, and they had to rent it, he asked. Their answer, they have to rent all the rooms. So this place is hopping, the Patrick Henry Hotel. Here's just another illustration of an artist's rendition of what went on that day at St. John's Church. Again, just a very impassioned speech, and I have to wonder, his wife is in such a mess, and he's just rode out there this morning with all of this weight on him, and he just, he just blew. And I think so many of these people were going through the same thing, that little push, that little push. This is St. John's Church. It's, I believe, the oldest standing church in Virginia. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's quite the sight to see. So ghostly sightings around the St. John's Church. Patrick Henry's apparition. Now, this just makes me sad. The most commonly reported ghost at St. John's Church is a tall figure in colonial clothing, believed to be the spirit of Patrick Henry. One eerie account comes from a group of visitors who attended a historical tour of the church late in the evening. They were stunned to see a shadowy figure standing in the pulpit, the very spot where Henry delivered his impassioned speech for liberty. Initially thinking it was a reenactor, the group was surprised when the figure suddenly vanished into thin air. There he is. I love his signature. Isn't it gorgeous? Many visitors have also reported seeing Henry's apparition wandering the churchyard, particularly near the old gravestones. It's believed that Henry's strong emotional connection to the church and the revolutionary ideas he had championed may have tied his spirit to the grounds, where he is seen pacing among the gravestones, or even heard as a faint, disembodied voice delivering his famous words. Can you imagine? Beyond the ghostly apparitions, many visitors have reported disembodied voices inside the church. Staff members have also experienced strange occurrences, such as hearing muffled conversations coming from empty rooms. Some have even claimed to hear what sounds like the passionate speech, although the words remain indistinct. These occurrences often coincide with cold spots, particularly near the pulpit and the pews where Henry once addressed his fellow revolutionaries. Paranormal investigators who have explored the church describe the sensation as both unsettling and awe-inspiring, as though the energy from that pivotal moment in history still reverberates within its walls. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? The century... Now, me, I'd just be sitting in there going, okay, Patrick, let's talk, because we got to get you moved on. Please tell me you're not stuck here. That you're just coming back rehearsing another speech or something. But, I mean, you know what I mean? When you get to this point, you're just past all that. You just want to help them. I don't know how else to describe it. The cemetery at St. John's Church is home to the graves of numerous prominent Virginians, including veterans of the Revolutionary War and early settlers. While Patrick Henry himself is buried elsewhere, his spirit is said to linger in the church ground. Visitors walking through the graveyard have described an overwhelming feeling of being watched, accompanied by sudden chills and unexplained light anomalies near the gravestones. That could be anybody. Let's be real. Unlike some of Virginia's other haunted graveyards where malevolent spirits have been reported, the apparitions at St. John's Church seem more residual than interactive, perhaps echoes of those who once walked these sacred grounds. Let's hope so. So this was interesting. This is a plaque outside of the St. John's Church, and it says, "As long as our rivers flow, our mountains stand. Say to the rising generations, imitate the excellence of Patrick Henry." And that was in the Virginia Gazette, June 14, 1799. Patrick Henry, 1736 to 1799, was a distinguished orator, lawyer, and politician. His famous words, "Give me liberty or give me death," urged Virginian militia to defend... Man, I can't see this. This is all... To defend the colonials against England. A member of the First Continental Congress, Patrick Henry was elected governor 4 times, organized men and materials for the Revolutionary War, and was influential in the adaptation of the Bill of Rights. I mean, if it wasn't for those who walked before us, where would we be? And this was put up by Doug Mastriano. I love Doug, Senator Doug, over there in Pennsylvania. But I thought I would put this up because absolutely, Patrick Henry ignites the American Revolution. And I got one more slide for you, but what I'm going to do now is let's take a little tour of one of his houses because I found something really neat. I wanted to share it with you. So, is this one it? Yeah, this is it. This is another great channel, and it is called Storytellers of Appalachia. And this is Patrick Henry's Red Hill home. This was his final home that he lived in when he passed. So get over there and subscribe and give it a thumbs up to Storytellers of Appalachia. And we'll take a few minutes and take a little tour of this beautiful home. Wonderfully done video here.
Patrick Henry's Red Hill is the final home and burial place of the American patriot and firebrand of the American Revolution and founding father, Patrick Henry. We take care of 1,000 of his original 3,000 acres. Here we also maintain the artifacts and his paper collection that we have here, so that when people come to visit, they understand what Patrick Henry did. He was the speaker that said, "Give me liberty or give me death," which was really what incited the American colonies to fight against the King of England and eventually earn their independence.
Red Hill is in Brookneal, Virginia. It is in Southside, Virginia. It's about an hour from the North Carolina border. Patrick Henry called this the garden spot of the world, and it is beautiful. I've never seen another historic site that looks like it. There is a small town nearby, but when you come out here, it's like it's been untouched since Patrick's time.
We take care of 1,000 of Patrick's original 3,000 acres. We have walking trails. We have his reconstructed home, his original law office, a kitchen in the colonial style, similar to what he would have had, a coachman's cabin, his grave site, and several other outbuildings. Patrick Henry, we call him the forgotten founder. He was a founding father just like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, but he was never president. And so that's why a lot of people, they maybe learn about him in 4th grade, but then they don't hear his name ever after that. But he was the person that really incited the American colonies to help fight against Great Britain and earn their independence from the king. He was the speaker that said, "Give me liberty or give me death." He wrote the Stamp Act resolves, which fought against the Stamp Act, which were taxes on paper goods that the king had begun to enforce here in the colonies. And so he was really someone that was stirring up the people to really want to earn their independence and be free. Patrick Henry purchased Red Hill in 1794 from Richard Booker. Prior to that, he had been living just a few miles from here, but he moved his family here on a full-time basis in 1796. By the time he moved here, he was pretty much retired. He had declined very prominent positions, including Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Vice Presidential candidate, Chief Envoy to Spain. Patrick had gone through the American Revolution. He had actually lived in 13 different homes over his lifetime, but he picked Red Hill as his last because of the peaceful tranquility that he found here. The people that lived at Red Hill included the Henry family, which was Patrick and his wife Dorothea, as well as 11 to 14 family members total. That included their children as well as one nephew named Johnny Christian. But along with them was also the enslaved population. We know in 1799, when Patrick died, in his inventory, it was listed that there were 67 enslaved people. They would have lived on an area of Red Hill called Quarter Place because they were the slave quarters. Patrick Henry had a very complicated relationship with slavery, as other founding fathers did. He was the speaker that said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Yet at the time of his death, he owned 67 enslaved people.
At Red Hill, we're really trying to expand our mission to tell the full story of the property, including not just Patrick Henry's story, but all the individuals that would have worked here and lived here from 1794 up until the last person that moved here. We're open year-round. It's beautiful in every season here at Red Hill. We're open from 9 to 5. And we always have a visitor staff person who's there to greet you in the visitor center.
When people come to Red Hill, they'll notice there's not a whole lot around here. It's still very rural, like when Patrick lived here. But we are only 35 minutes from Appomattox Courthouse, which is where the Civil War ended. And so that, partnered with Red Hill, typically makes a pretty good day trip.
Well, how nice is that? Isn't that well done? So it's really neat to take these little trips and to see where the person we're talking about lived and how they lived. I love how they put it out there, warts and all. You know, let's, talk about how a guy, so many of them, and so many people back then, and the struggles. I think that was one of my favorite parts of a fantastic musical called 1776. And it's actually being put on in a play in a local community theater here, and I hope to get to see it this spring. And even though it's a musical and all that, and the fun with it, I remember taking a class trip in 8th grade to Washington, D.C., and one of the things we did on that trip, amongst all the other things that you normally would do to a trip to Washington in the 8th grade, was we got to go to the Kennedy Center and watch 1776. It just come out in theaters not long before. And it was really a great way to learn about signing the Declaration of Independence, to go back and talk to the history teacher and talk about, the poetic license and what really happened. And, did they really all sign it on the same day? And I got to learn all about that and how it took like 6 months to get all the signatures on it because everybody had dispersed and gone back to their farms and their businesses and everything else, and had to take it around, to get it signed. And, there were several different copies that went out to other colonies. And, because again, you didn't have telephones, you didn't have, everything was written down, and this had to be read, heralded, in the towns by people who could read, who were literate, to people who could not. And so it took a while to get this word all spread out about the Declaration of Independence and multiple things. And 1776 was a great musical to learn about it in. And one of the great conversations in there was the struggle with the 2 paragraphs that were written by Thomas Jefferson. And most people think Patrick Henry had a good hand in that, and so did Ben Franklin and John Adams, of course. But when Thomas Jefferson went back and was trying to hold on to those 2 paragraphs to end slavery, there was a battle fought on that floor like none other, because of all the money, the businesses. They had no idea what to do to change things, what to do with the slaves after the fact. I mean, the arguments back and forth really showed you the times and the struggle that good men trying to end such an abomination, and chipping away at it. And my amazement of just sitting there listening to those conversations and the fight, the side I would have been on to end it completely. I mean, how can we write these words and be serious when we're enslaving people? You just can't do it. Freedom for all, period. And those that it broke their heart to strike out those paragraphs, because they said, if we do not strike this out, we will not have a declaration, and we must have a country before we can start to fix it. And that was enough to bandage the wounds of those who hearts literally bled over such a thing. But when people tell you that war, that was fought for independence, and both sides fought together. It's crazy how, in a crisis we can all be together and then go back to fighting each other afterwards. But the amazement of that, it took another 100 years for it to be really brought up again by Lincoln and those that fought to get it ended then. Even though I will sit here and tell you that's not what the Civil War was about, but they sure put it in there. And again, fought together and then fought each other after. So we have a tendency of taking a century to sort things out. We're still trying to sort things out, and I think that's just what good humans do. They just try to sort it out. Let's talk about it. Let's bang it out, right? So this man, like she said, he lived in multiple different houses. There was another one, and I love this, and it's a great way to end this. Another fantastic channel that I'm going to feature here. I could not do this as well as he did because I can't get there. But this is just fantastic. And he's so knowledgeable that I just had to share a piece of this with you. So here we go. Back to Scotchtown now. And let's see if he mentions anything about the ghosts. I don't know if he does, but let's see. Friends. It's called. Wait a minute, I'm gonna get it right. Oh shoot, what did I do? Is that it? Yeah, here it is. So make sure I got the right one for you.
Switching tax services can be a drag.
Past the commercial. Hold on for a brief moment. Yes, it's Virginia Travels. I wanted to get it right. Yes.
It may have been painted at the time, but
Think your taxes are simple?
Oh, for Pete's
You could
sake.
file for free with H&R Block. More people
That's
qualify for
bullshit.
H&R Block free online than Turbo.
Just charged me an arm and a leg. Right, here we go. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? It just makes you feel good.
Greetings, guys. Chris, VA Travels, back out here in Hanover County in a town called Beaver Dam. Pretty cool name for a town. But yeah, I'm going to visit Scotchtown, the home of Patrick Henry, one
Does
of
such a good job.
Virginia's most important founding fathers.
Look at that.
And he lived in this house during the 1770s. And he lived here during his most influential period when he gave his famous Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death speech. So I'm going to go in and take the tour and then walk the grounds.
okay, this room is set up as Sarah's room. They're not sure exactly where the master bedroom was, but at the time this would have been stuffed with horsehair, hay possibly, and baby's cradle here.
Look at that. Look
Little
at the
bonnet
floors.
right there. Some more pillows. Okay, child's rocking chair. Old writing desk. And check out this chiffero.
Right.
I have to ask what type of wood that is. I don't think that's mahogany. I don't think so. But yeah, here's the bathroom, a wash basin, and you know what went on right there. And there's Sarah, his wife, and yeah, she suffered from melancholy. She had a mental illness, and legend has it she may have been kept in the basement. And the doctor had ordered her to attend the East State Hospital out in Williamsburg. Patrick Henry was familiar with it, didn't want her to stay there because back then they had bloodletting. It weren't the best conditions. She would have been isolated. So, yeah, they say that she was kept in the basement, and she died here in 1775 at the age of 37, and possibly suicide. Again, no records. They say it was kept quiet because of Henry's political career, but yeah, pretty sad. Okay.
Look at the scissors.
And let me see. Cool. Okay, Patrick's office. And check out this writing desk.
I just love wood grain.
And
Something about.
yeah, this is an original,
Look
but
at
it's
that.
old.
Yeah, it is.
And I always look for hidden compartments. Check this out, 2 pounds currency.
Look at that.
Pretty neat.
It's almost like going on a museum tour, isn't it? We don't even have to pay for the tour.
George the
Nice.
Third.
This guy does a great job. I just found him today. I think he's
And
wonderful.
over here, they think this may have
Look at
been,
this
most
table.
likely it's original. It's a map desk.
Map desk.
These arms fold out so you can lay out a large map. And check out this old
that.
map, 1770. And here we are,
Right there.
Hanover County. Not too far north of the James. And down here, you'll see original flooring.
Look at that.
You'll see the handmade nails.
Handmade nails, yeah.
Check out this map of North America.
Look at that.
And over here, there's a copy of a Charles Peale painting
of
George all done up.
Yep.
He's got that metal plate around his neck. He's got a little book in his pocket. Yeah, nice painting. And original receipt signed by Patrick Henry, 1760. Wow.
I love this signature.
Cool. Pretty good back on this chair. A little urn right here. A little tea table in the corner. And let's see, the southwest prospect of the city of Canterbury. All right.
Always amazed at how narrow the stairs are.
Is set up to mimic Patrick Henry's bedchamber. Again, they don't know exactly which room it was in. I don't think it would have been right next to the office originally, but candle holder. Go check out this desk, little corner chair right here. Tri-cornered hat.
There it is. Crispy's got one of those. Look at the, oh my gosh, look at the boxes.
All right, there's glasses. They're probably not original, but the famous glasses he has in that picture on top of his head. This indenture. I promised to pay John Robinson. Pretty cool. All right, powdered wig made of horse and goat hair. And it's original to the time. I mean, that's not Patrick Henry's, but pretty cool. I always like to look at the lock plates.
Get that.
And this is the coast of South Carolina.
He's very knowledgeable about historic artifacts.
Or just the Carolinas at the time. Oh, and this chair is original to the Henry family. It's been reupholstered.
Listen to this.
And to get nerdy, a lot of times when you see these simple backs on the chairs, they were made in Williamsburg. The three big makers of furniture would be Williamsburg, Philadelphia, and Boston. And Philadelphia would get the most fancy. All right, so a little bed warmer. Stick coal in there, and a little trick. A lot of times they would put heated sand in there because coal would kind of let off bad fumes. And these muskets, they're reproduction, but they're still old. They're not original, but cool. All right, take a look at the dining room. Elizabeth Henry Campbell Russell, Patrick's sister. And interesting note, she became a Methodist, moved out to Western Virginia to spread the religion. Pretty good painting of her. Okay, looks like just a little tray to keep your food warm. And pretty nice spread over here. Check out this roast. Looks pretty good, actually. Some beets over here. And horseradish.
They'll use that a lot, maybe. Horseradish, yep.
But, okay, just simple plates. Yeah, these forks maybe aren't accurate for the time. But pretty good spread. And you've got some Asian pieces over here.
That's the ones.
In this tea box over here, this is original. It was Patrick's mother's.
That's the one that keeps moving.
And pretty good inlay. And may have been painted at the time, but yeah, I'm sure it's faded out. These cabinets weren't here. Whenever you see cabinets like this, they're not going to be original to the late 1700s. Pretty old, though.
For anyone with dementia, do not drink warm water.
Oh my
Did you
God.
know that memory loss is not a condition of the mind?
You'll see the handmade hinges. And there are stairs back there that lead to the attic. The attic's unfinished, so this is technically just a one-story house. Pretty cool. Cabriole legs. Well, they're not really bent that much, but claw and ball. Feet down on the bottom. Big old punch bowl. And Chippendale chairs back here, pretty nice backs on them. Oh yes, Queen Anne chairs for any furniture lovers. I'll just show off real quick. Cool. All right, keep moving on. I see a fiddle over here. Patrick was a musician, played the flute, played the fiddle. I'll just come over and take a closer look. Oh, really old case back here.
Plastic beats.
And more toys for the children.
Yep.
What is this?
Yes.
Older lady sewing.
Look at that. Look at that picture.
And pretty nice kind of corner chiffreau.
Isn't it a Schiffer robe? Is there a B on the end of that word? I'm asking for friend.
And
I always said it with a B at the end. I could be wrong.
And then
it might be a Schiffer
down
robe.
here, what is this?
Interesting.
Is that King Charles with his head on?
Oh, look at that.
Henry the Seventh.
It's like a puzzle.
First in the Tudor dynasty. And over here, we've got a cottage. This is the Honeymoon Cottage, built 1675, home of Patrick Henry from 1754 to 1764.
They were probably much happier then. I don't know if I had six kids.
Oh, King Henry VIII right here.
By that age, I'd have gone bonkers myself. What is that? I'm not liking the checked upholstery.
Take a look at
Too
these
busy.
paintings.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Just show off these dishes. Is that Versailles?
You see that glass? That looks like hand-blown glass. Look at that. That's old glass right there. Some of it is.
Pretty neat. Okay. All right. Let me show you this bust of Patrick up
There
close.
he is. There he is. Love the candle holders.
Pretty cool picture of Washington, Henry, and Pendleton going to the first Congress.
To the first one. Yep, with an E. That's what I thought, with a B-E. Thank you.
All right, so it looks like these
Thank you,
fragments were
sweetheart.
discovered in 1969. And this room back here, they've got just set up as a museum. Going over the history of the house and its owners.
That sounds
And
nice.
it's rumored that Dolly Madison lived here,
How about that?
but they're not sure if that's true. Later in life, she said that she lived here, but when she described it, her description wasn't too accurate. But there she is.
There's Dolly. Now she's got a good ghost story.
An
Rose
original
Garden.
autographed manuscript.
Washington.
There's her autograph.
White
right
House.
there.
Look at that. Look at the writing. Now, is this Sarah?
Yeah, Patrick owned the house 1771 to 1781. But he actually moved out 1776.
There she is.
Moved into the governor's palace out there in Williamsburg when he became governor. And there's Sarah.
There she is.
Maybe not the best drawing in the world, but all right. But yeah, it was officially sold 1781 to Colonel William Miles Carey. Succession of owners. Here it is, 1800. Okay, a picture from 1933. Yeah, it's been fixed up a lot. All right, so the Shepherd Taylor family, 1821 until 1881.
It's a nice
he was
hat.
born here at Scotchtown. And here's a survey plat. Okay, punch bowl from 1765.
Wow.
Okay, looks like those cracks were kind of filled in.
You know, that came from
Pretty neat.
overseas.
A mosaic quilt over
A lot
here.
of that hadn't been even started here yet. It got on with it, though.
Oh, and I know some of you guys like to look at the blueprints of these houses. So here you go.
Wow. Look at all that.
Details.
The basement details.
Attic.
So that's when he built the rooms that she was staying in.
All right,
Oh,
and
gosh.
the last tenants.
I like that lamp.
Captain Edmund Taylor, son of John Taylor, divided the property in 1881. His daughters,
It is.
Sally and Lavinia, were the last two owners. So then, 1941, the house was abandoned.
Oh, wow, Lisa.
And then in 1958, it was acquired by the Preservation Virginia.
Beautiful. Oh, Henry.
So this land was acquired by Charles Chisel through a land grant.
I do too.
And yeah, it's pronounced Chisel, even though it looks like Chiswell. But yeah, original house they think was built. This is vague information. They're not even totally sure. But 1719, you'll see the original portion of the house. But there is a chance that it was built near here and just taken down, and this entire house was built fresh. Okay, so it looks like there was an iron furnace. Yeah, they think he moved out here to start up an iron furnace. Here's some pig iron from 1737.
Pig iron.
And
I
you
hadn't
see
heard
the
that in a long
initials
time. Pig iron.
on there. And preparing a cast, 1890.
We got to bring that stuff
Yeah,
back.
some hot work. William Byrd, founder of Richmond, he used to visit Scotchtown.
Well, there you go, folks. You didn't know you were going to visit Scotchtown tonight.
Okay, just finished the house tour.
Nice
And again,
job.
sorry, I had to cut it short. Another tour was starting up. But yeah, I got most of it in. And so the back of Scotchtown,
Look at that.
this thing is 93 feet long, 35 feet wide. You'll see those two giant internal chimneys. The one on the left is a little bit larger. Giant medallions underneath the overhang.
That's
There's a reason you can.
some house. Well, I'll tell you what. You get over there to this channel and over there to Virginia Travels and support his, oh my goodness, what was that? And support him because he does a great job. You know, and he's got a lot of different tours. And Virginia, there's no end to the different historic places you can go there. So Virginia Travels, I really liked how he took the time and all the little details and everything. I felt like I've been there. I watched another guy, gentleman, a couple of days ago take me through Thomas Jefferson's house, and I had no idea, you know, the architecture he did, the style, and the way he did Monticello is just incredible. So I highly recommend it. Some of these YouTube channels just blow you away. I wish I had that to be able to go and get a lot of, you know, things down, you know, historical things. And, you know, you just get so busy in your work and you try to fit everything in. You just can't do all that you want to do. And I did get a chance to go to the Monmouth battlefield, and that was really something. And then I brought home the historian so you could talk to him. So that was kind of cool. But I like to do more of that. And, you know, where I'm headed, I think I want to be able to do a little bit more of that for you and do a little bit of what he's doing. I think that's fantastic. I would love to go visit these places. You know, like you're saying, it's on your bucket list. It just brings it home. It really does bring it to you where you can touch it and go, man, this really happened. You know, when you put your hands on a cannon or, you know, you're standing in the ground right in the middle of a field that, you know, two massive armies just collided and just fought for all they were worth. And, you know, at that point, you're not even sure if they knew what they were fighting for anymore. You know, battle is so weary and war is tiresome. You know, this is why we have to stay out of them. We have to show peace through strength, and we have to try to talk it out. We have to try to negotiate, and it's excruciating to do so. But I would rather see people go to 100 meetings than, you know, a minute of war. It's just, you know, we've learned from history. We know most wars are only, you know, really won by those that are making money on both sides of it. And most of the time we're getting sucked into wars. That's not even why we're going, and I've known that my entire life. As far as, being a young kid growing up, during Vietnam, and, we had plenty of people in the family that could tell me about World War II, and it just, all wars stink. Sometimes they're necessary, to defend your territory. And I think that's when it's most dangerous, because there's nothing like a person defending their own home. There's nothing like a person who's defending their own homeland. And there certainly is nothing like a person who is defending their own freedom. Once you've tasted it, you don't ever want to give it up. And you don't let people take it from you, not from brute force, and not by little, death by 1,000 cuts either. And when you see that happening, and then you see somebody come along and stop it, it's a wonderment. And done without a war, and done by law, and done by the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and those words written and agreed upon by the founders of the country, it's mind-blowing. And to think about 250 years ago, today, blows me away. Blows me away. And I'm so glad I discovered it this morning. And I'll tell you how I discovered it this morning. So I was looking through my social media, and this pops up. And I see the president speaking with such honor of a man who lived 250 years ago, whose words still resonate. And I love the fact that they're bringing it up to the forefront. I think some of the things I'm seeing being done right now, honoring those people, because, if they hadn't walked before us, we wouldn't have this trail we're walking on now. And right or wrong, again, we learn from the mistakes. We try to better them, make better choices, make better decisions. But this blew me away. And I think this is, as much as I love pardoning turkeys on Thanksgiving, some of the ones, these that are coming out, just absolutely make my heart swell with pride. So I'm gonna read you a little piece of it if I can, because it's real small. I'm gonna get close up with my big old glasses and see if I can read a part of it anyway. 250th anniversary of Patrick Henry's "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech by the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. Our nation proudly commemorates the 250th anniversary of Patrick Henry, an address to the Second Virginia Convention, a seminal moment in our great American story, and a fateful turning point in America's epic struggle for independence. On March 23rd, 1775, Patrick Henry rose to the pulpit of St. John's Church in Richmond, Virginia, to speak those immortal words that remain etched upon every American heart: "Give me liberty or give me death." In the wake of the escalating tensions between the Patriots and the Redcoats, Henry delivered a stirring address before more than 100 delegates, including George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and many of the statesmen who would go on to sign the Declaration of Independence, and there was 56. Following the bloody Boston Massacre and the British Parliament's authoritarian imposition of the Intolerable Acts, which closed the Boston Harbor and stripped New England colonists their right to self-govern, American leaders deliberated whether to continue their pursuit of peace or, as a final resource, to take up arms in the rebellion. With British tyranny on the rise and American confidence in retreat, the Second Virginia Continental Convention, assembled. Patrick Henry, a respected lawyer who had recently served as a delegate to the Continental Congress, arrived at the convention with one goal in mind: to galvanize militiamen into securing our inestimable, that's a hard word to say, inestimable rights and liberties from those further violations with which they are threatened. So today, a proclamation was made by President Trump to remember this man. There's a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the Oval Office. There's a lot of things being done, a lot of things being said. And I'll tell you what, I can't wait to see more of this. This made me very happy today. And I hope you receive it in the same way. Because if we do not remember history, we are destined to repeat it. George Santayana. Thanks to the little librarian that knew it didn't sound quite right. We wanted to give credit where credit was due. And I appreciate people like that who dig for the truth, even though there's a little fib on top that's a little easier. We might as well just go by that. No, we want the truth. Let's dig up the truth. Let's put it right up front, the front porch. We can keep an eye on it, warts and all. We're going to make it, people. When you have a foundation that has stood on words that were spoken 250 years ago that still resonate today, I can tell you this, it's hard to kill an idea. And it's absolutely hard to stop a patriot's heart from beating once it has tasted freedom. Freedom. I hope you have it. I hope you always have it. And I hope you always appreciate it. Thank you to Patrick Henry for riding that horse, getting in there and saying those words, along with everybody else that put down quill to paper, stood, and no matter what they were going through in their own life, a wife, kids that had an absent mom, but to him, it was more important that he got to that church and said that speech or whatever he was planning on saying to let these people know that it was time to stand up and defend their square foot of real estate. I think it's pretty cool. So thank you all for being here tonight. This is definitely going in the Liberty playlist that we did this summer. And I'm so glad we did. It certainly helped me through a lot of mess that we were going through. And I hope it inspired you. Hey, Froze. How you doing, sweetheart? Are you picking up what I'm laying down, sweetie? I hope everybody there is safe and all your neighbors are safe. Please give our love to everybody that is struggling through weather or wildfires or whatever today's, mess is. And it's just going to keep coming. Just like these people went before us with so much less at their fingertips, so much that they didn't have the technology we have, and they didn't have all the things, but they had the heart. They had the primal need for survival. They had the love of family. They had the love of country. They had the knowledge of what was right and wrong, and they knew when they had enough. And I think a lot of us had enough of the nonsense. Again, you be you. As long as your peanut butter doesn't get in my chocolate, we're fine. But you come over here, you got a patriot that had a lot of tutors and a lot of really fantastic elders and a lot of fantastic people to look back on and strive all kinds of inspiration. And I'll tell you, they didn't back down. We ain't budging. We know our rights. We know yours. I wore a uniform to protect mine and yours. And I'm sure a lot of people out there did. A lot of people out there. They feel the same way. I once told a vet, as I try to do it every chance I get, hey, thank you for your service. You know what they said? One guy said back to me, Thank you for having a country worth saving. Let's keep it that way. I love you all. Thank you for being here with me tonight. Love all around. If you need a prayer, take one. If you need some good energy, take it. If you need some love and encouragement, please go back and look at these words. Look into Patrick Henry. Look into these wonderful, Samuel was something else because he was he was an orator. He was smart. He was a little older, a little wiser. But man, he could stir up. He could stir up a situation. He was always trying to figure out how to get something done, but still keep the peace. And then he got to a point where he was like, sometimes I guess you can't, but you always keep trying. Peace. So it's a worthy goal. It's a worthy goal. I hope you're happy today. I hope you're happy tomorrow. I think we're going to have a heck of a year with a lot of surprises. Let's hope they're all good. I love you all. Be good human beings. See you tomorrow. Who's to say what we're going to do tomorrow? I'm not sure, but I hope we'll have a good time and we'll be here together, and that's the most important thing, right? All right. Good night, everybody. Be good humans.